morning, 7th grade. Welcome to week 11, day 3. Today is June 3rd. I'm coming to you from a slightly different position than normal for my video, so I'm hoping that you guys can still see everything pretty clearly. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me. My cat is just sitting where I normally videotape, so having to accommodate. All right, so you'll click on your classwork tab to see what you are expected to do today. You'll scroll down to day 3, June 3rd. Today our lesson is going to be the angles formed by the parallel lines, which you guys have already seen and understood their relationship. A lot of you did very well on the assessment yesterday, so I was so pleased to see that. And anyone that still is struggling, please review the links and the images and the support posters that I posted on the stream on Monday afternoon as well as Tuesday morning. I brought it up to the top of the stream. So if you're still struggling, please review those because you need to know those relationships in order to be successful on today's lesson, okay? There is a link here for support if you need additional after watching our video today, and I will take you through our lesson. All right, so warm up. Pretty simple. You're just finding the missing angle measures. At this point, you guys should know which angles are equal to 125 and how to find that other angle measure. So the angles that would be equal to 125 would be 1, 4, 5, and 8. And if you notice with my cursor, I'm going in a zigzag motion to remind myself of that dot method, right? I start here. I go zigzag down, equal, zigzag across, equal, zigzag down, equal. Okay? Now, how did we come up with that 55? Well, angles that are next to each other in this type of diagram are supplementary. That means they add to 180 degrees. So all we had to do was 180 subtracted by 125 to get that other angle measure, 55 degrees. So when angles are next to each other or adjacent means next to. They are supplementary in these types of diagrams, okay? And then again, we would do, okay, now that I know that this angle here at the top right is 55, you could do the zigzag again if you want. 2 to 3, 55, zigzag down, 6, 55, zigzag across, 7, 55. You guys should also remember your relationships. 2 and 3 are vertical across from each other. That means they are equal. 3 and 6 are alternate interior. That means they are equal or congruent. 3 and 7 are corresponding. They slide right onto each other. They would also be congruent, equal in measure. Okay? So here we're going to take our understanding and apply some algebra. So the first thing they want to do, they give us our diagram. They want us to solve for x. So the only way you can solve for x is by identifying the relationship that you know about the angles in the picture. So I made the same diagram here to go over that with you. So looking at this picture, I want to just also reiterate, I saw some people getting this question wrong, which I was really surprised on the assessment. This would be like this, okay? This is what you saw in your assessment. Lines A and B are parallel lines. They're the lines that never intersect, never cross each other. So there was two options, parallel and perpendicular. We didn't even talk about perpendicular lines. So for those of you that picked perpendicular, I was a little concerned because we hadn't even discussed that. These are going to be your parallel lines, and that's how these different angle relationships that we've explored are formed. When this line, that's usually labeled with a T, T is for transversal, cuts through them. Okay, so just a little heads up on that. All right, so looking at this picture, they give us those two angles. I notice that they are adjacent or next to each other. So looking at them, I'm just noticing that if I put this angle, I'm going to highlight it, together with this angle, right? They definitely are not equal because this is acute and this is obtuse. But when I put them together, what do they form? They form a straight angle, which means they are supplementary. And what does that mean? That means that if I add them together, they're going to equal 180 degrees. So we can use that understanding to write an equation to solve for x. 16x plus 2 plus 43x plus 1 is going to equal 180 degrees. So let's write that down. We would get 16x plus 1, plus 2. That's the angle on the left, right? Plus my angle on the right, I'll do a different color for that, 43x plus 1. When I put those two angles together, they're supplementary. They equal to 180 degrees. And now this is an equation we should all know how to solve, right? We want to combine our like terms, so I'm going to put 16x and positive 43x together. That's going to give me a total of 59x. And then I also know I could put my constant, so let's put together 2 and positive 1. That's going to give us positive 3 equals 180. Okay, solve our equation. So I'm going to inverse my constant by doing the opposite of adding 3. I'm going to subtract 3. So I get 59x equals 180 minus 3 is 177. And then the final step would be to divide. Okay, and we're going to get a final answer of x equals 3 because 59 goes into 177 3 times. Okay, so on your exit slip today, you're going to be given a diagram like this. The first question is going to say solve for x. So if this was our first question, we would say, okay, x equals 3. The second question is going to be the same diagram, but instead of asking for x, now they're going to ask you to solve for the angle measure. So let's solve for 16x plus 2 first. I'm going to put that up here. 16x plus 2. Now, I already know what x equals. X equals 3. So I'm going to plug x equals 3 into x. I'm not going to write it in my angle anymore. So I'm going to do 16 times 3. That's a little ugly, but that's okay. You guys see it. Plus 2. Okay, so 16 times 3 is going to give us a product of 48. And then plus 2 will give us an answer of 50 degrees. So the second question in your exit ticket is going to say, okay, now solve for this angle. So this angle would be equal to 50 degrees. The third question is going to be the same diagram again. They're not going to ask you to solve for x because they already did that in the first question. They're not going to ask you to solve for this angle because you already did it in the second question. They're now going to ask you to solve for this angle. And you can do that one of two ways. You can do it the same way we just did here by plugging it in. X equals 3. The angle is 43 times x plus 1, right? 43 times 3 is going to be 129 plus 1. So our final answer will be 130 degrees. So this angle is equal to 130 degrees. Now, some of you might have realized a quicker way to get that angle because we already said, well, this angle plus this angle is 180. So if I know that this is 50, then obviously this angle would be the difference of 180 minus 50, which is 130. Some of you could do that like mentally in your head, but otherwise here would be the steps algebraically to find that angle, okay? So every time you're given a picture like this, the steps you're going to take to find these measures. I'm just going to show it to you one more time before I erase. Okay, so the steps you're going to take to find these measures are right here. First thing you want to do is determine the angle relationship provided. So what does that mean? That means exactly what we just did. When I showed you that picture, I walked you through my thought process. Are these angles supplementary? Are they equal to each other? What's their relationship? So once we figure that out, we can write our equation. We were able to write that equation equal to 180 because our example was supplementary. Sometimes they're going to be congruent, so you make them equal. You then solve for the variable, and then you plug it into the angle measures to solve for them. The final thing you could do is check, which is what I showed you, the 180 plus, the 150 plus 30 equaled 180. So I knew my answers were correct because they equaled to the correct measure of supplementary angles, 180 degrees. Okay, let's do another one. So this time we have a different diagram. I'm going to draw it for us. Okay, the line's going down here. And we have 80 degrees up here. And we have 20x over here. Okay, so given this diagram, using our steps, the first thing you want to think about is, what is their relationship? What is the relationship between these two angles? If I had to call them something, what would we call them? Well, I noticed that they are on the outside of the parallel lines, right? So that means they are exterior. I also noticed that they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So not only are they exterior, these angles are alternate exterior angles. And what do I know about alternate exterior angles? Alternate exterior angles are congruent, which means they are equal in measure. They are equal to each other. Okay, so if they are equal to each other, then when we set up our equation, we're going to say this angle equals this angle. So let's set that up. 80 degrees equals 20x. Now, if for some reason you're not good at remembering the vocabulary and the relationship, you could also do the dot method to see if they're equal or supplementary. If I put a dot on this angle and I did the dot method, zigzag down and across, let's see, down, this would be 80, across, this would be 80, down, this would be 80. So this is telling me that they both have dots, they're equal. Okay, unlike the last example we did where they were supplementary, so we added them together to equal 180. These angles are going to be equal to each other, so here's our equation. We now solve for x. This is a pretty simple equation because we only have one inverse to do. 20 is multiplying x, so our inverse would simply be to divide. I believe on your exit ticket you have a little bit more work to do, but the angles are equal to each other because they are going to also be alternate exterior. Okay, so we'll cancel that out. I'll be left with x equals 80 divided by 20 is 4. So again, for the second question, it's going to start off the same way. Solve for x. This would be my first answer. X equals 4. The next question is going to say, okay, now solve for this angle. Now in yours, instead of it being 80, I don't know, maybe it's going to be like, putting me on the spot here, 5x plus 60. Okay, let's just say that. Let's just say for our purposes that that angle was 5x plus 60. And I'll even do the equation over for you guys again. We're going to get the same thing because I made it so that it would be. But so let's say it was 5x plus 60 equals 20x. Okay, to solve this, we would pick our anchor. I would keep 20x there. I would inverse 5x. Take that away. We're left with 60 equals 15x. And then we would divide by 15. And we would get x equals 4. So same thing as before. I made sure that x was the same solution. Okay, so now that's the first part. We solve for x. Second part, they're going to say, solve for this angle measure. So we take that angle measure. I know that x equals 4, and the angle measure was 5x plus 60. So instead of writing x, I'm going to plug in 4. So it's going to be 5 times 4, okay, plus 60. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 60, and then 20 plus 60 equals 80 degrees. Which we already knew because I just changed it a little bit to model it more like what you're going to see on your exit slip. So this angle we already have is 80 degrees, okay? Second angle, that's going to be the third question for part 2. They're going to ask you find the other angle. So again, x equals 4. 20x is that angle measure, so 20x. I'm going to plug in 4 for x. And 20 times 4 gives us our 80 degrees. So this angle is also going to be 80 degrees. Now, quick check. We said earlier that these angles should be equal to each other. Did they come out equal in our work? Yes, they did. So I know that we are correct and I can submit that answer. All right? So I'm just using those same steps over and over and over again to figure this out. And everything I just went through with you is in your lesson. Notice at the bottom, I even show you that quick check that I just explained. Okay, But it's super important for you guys to remember those relationships, because that's how you're going to be able to write the equation so that you know if they are equal or if they equal to 180. Okay, last one I'll go through with you and then I'll send you off on your way. So we are given parallel lines cut by a transversal. We are given this angle here, and we are given this angle here. Okay, so first thing you want to do is look at these angles and figure out what is their relationship. Well, I'm noticing that they are inside of the parallel lines, right? So that means they are interior. I'm also noticing that they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So not only are they interior, but they are going to be alternate interior. And I know that alternate interior angles are equal to each other. They are congruent. They are equal in measure. So that means that this angle, 3x plus 16, equals 5x minus 54. And that's going to be the relationship I use to solve for x. So let's write that down. 3x plus 16, right, that's this angle, equals 5x minus 54. Okay? Again, if you're not good with like the vocabulary or whatever, you can use the dot method. Put your dot, zigzag down and across, so down, across, down. And look what happened. They both got dots, which means they are equal in measure. They are equal to each other. So now we have to solve this. Notice we have variables on both sides, so we have to pick an anchor. I'm going to keep 5x there and move my 3x by subtracting. So 3x minus 3x will cancel. I'll be left with 16 equals 5x minus 3x is 2x minus 54. We have to move this 54 over to get our constants together. Okay, so 16 plus 54 is going to give us an answer of 70 equals 2x. That cancels. We divide by 2, and we get x equals 35. So again, first question, it's going to say solve for x. Here's our answer. Then they're going to say, okay, solve for this angle. So we take what x equals 35, and we plug it into the angle measure. So it was 3x plus 16. I'm going to plug in 35 for x. Okay, once you have that plugged in, you're then going to solve the equation. So 3 times 35 is 105. I then add that to 16, and I get an answer of 121 degrees. So this angle here is 121 degrees. I then go to my next angle. That's going to be the third question for this one, and solve for that one. So it's 5x minus 54. Again, x was equal to 35, so we plug that in. Okay, 5 times 35 is 175. Take away 54, and that answer is going to give us 121. So I now know that this angle here is 121. Last thing you want to do, make sure that this makes sense, that you got the same measure. Does it make sense? Yes, it does, because we already decided earlier that these were equal in measure or congruent because they were alternate interior angles. So I hope this helped you guys. I modeled this lesson exactly off your Google form today. So if you're watching it, make sure each question is very similar to each question in your form. I hope that this helps. There's a refresher on the relationships to remind you which ones are equal and which ones are supplementary. Okay, and then you have your exit ticket to complete. I'll show you where that is and say goodbye. So there it is. Your steps are there again as a reminder. Complete, take your time, try your best, and stay safe, guys.